everyone, Modern Mama Shark here, and in today's video I'm going to help you figure out your size in Louboutins. By the end of this video, I want everyone, no matter what shape feet you have, whether you have narrow feet, regular, wide, or extra wide, for everyone to be able to determine their size correctly and do it from the comfort of your own home. I can tell you from experience that there is nothing more tragic than buying a pair of highly expensive designer shoes, ruining the red bottoms, and then realizing that they're either way too big or way too small for your feet. I know because I've had that happen 3 times to me. I bought 2 that were too big and 1 that was too small. But that's not going to happen to you because you're going to watch my guide and you're going to learn from my mistakes. So I have a 6-step process that I do now for figuring out my size, and I'm going to share that information with you. So we're going to go over a couple of different sections. We're going to first go over sizing myths. Then we're going to go over buying your first pair and what you should be expecting in order to determine whether or not you pick the correct size. And then the whole last half of this is going to be my 6-step process that I go through with each new pair of shoes. It hasn't failed me yet since I implemented it. I've bought 10 shoes since then and they've all been the correct size. So I know you can do it too. There is nothing more sad or more tragic than ending up with a beautiful pair of designer shoes that you know you can't wear. Another thing I'm going to be talking a little bit about is sizing for wide foot girls. Now this video, 95% of it is for everyone. I really feel like everyone should see this video because this is going to be a very comprehensive guide. Like I said, you should, at the end of this video, feel very comfortable figuring out your size on Louboutins. But I happen to have white feet, and the one thing I noticed when I was trying to pick out my first pair was that there's not a lot of videos out there made by girls with wide feet. There are a lot of wonderful videos out there, it's just most of the women seem to have the narrow supermodel Kate type feet is what I call it. So they have supermodel Kate type feet, so they wear the So Kates or the Kate 100s or whatever, and I simply do not have supermodel Kate type feet at all. My feet are very wide. So it made it challenging for me because when you get to the point where they're trying to help us wide foot girls by making recommendations, they really can't because they can't relate. So we're told either one of 2 things. Number 1, we're always told pick the Ariza. Apparently that is the only style for wide foot girls. Not true. Not true. I can tell you that from experience, it's not true, but that bothered me because that's like the one style that I don't actually care for. But I can tell you, and you'll learn, that there are other styles out there for wide foot girls. The other thing we're told is to size up. Some people suggest sizing up a whole size. That is absolutely insane. You are going to end up with shoes that are entirely too big for your feet. They're going to be completely unwearable. And that brings me to the first myth that we need to dispel. There is this wide recommendation out there that everyone needs to size up. If you have regular feet, they say maybe you can get away with your true to size, but really you should size up a half size. And then wide foot girls, like I said, we're told to size up a whole size. That is how you end up with 2 pairs that are entirely too big for your feet. Do not do it. Do not do it. I'm actually going to quote the Christian Louboutin website right now to explain why. So, under the facts section on his website, it says, the most common misconception when purchasing Christian Louboutin shoes is that a larger size will increase the width of the toe box and decrease the tightness of the material, when actually going up in size only changes the length. This is one of the most important things to remember. Louboutin has shoe styles and shoe like toe boxes basically. He has a toe box for every type of foot. Whether you have narrow feet, regular, wide, or extra wide, there is a toe box made for your feet. So if you have wide feet and you're trying on a Kate, which is for narrow feet, you can try to go up a whole size, but like he said, it's not going to change the width of that toe box. That material is still going to be really, really tight, and it's just not going to work. That is how you end up with shoes that are way too big for your feet. So Louboutins are meant to be really, really tight when you first purchase them. For narrow feet, maybe they feel a little tight, not terribly tight, but for regular and wide feet, they're going to feel very, very tight. So Louboutins are meant to break in and mold to your feet over time, and they honestly, they get really big after you wear them. So that is the one key thing I want you to remember, is that yes, they're going to be tight in the beginning and they're going to probably feel too small. But if you don't need length, if you have a shoe and you're right up against the back, you're probably fine. You want no heel gap at all. I'll do a quick video on it, but basically you want no heel gap at all. If you have a heel gap, the shoes are probably going to break in too much and be too big for your feet. Yeah, if I'm being honest, if you watch enough reviews on Louboutins, you'll notice that there's probably thousands of videos out there of women who are reviewing a style of shoe in Louboutin, and they'll say something like, oh, you know, I bought it, it fit great, and now it's too big. You know, it's a few months later and I feel like it's too big. Or, hey, I tried it, I thought it was too tight, so I went up a half a size and now it's too big. Just watch the whole video. You will see at some point they will admit that that shoe was probably too big for them. Because it's a common misconception. We've all done it. It's honestly, it's like a rite of passage. So you end up with at least one pair that's entirely too big for your feet. So keep that in mind when you are trying your first pair. Okay guys, so I'm going to tell you a little story about buying my first pair of Louboutins to also help you figure out what you're going to be going through. So I don't live anywhere near a Saks or a Nordstrom's or Louboutin store. Nowhere near where I can physically try on a pair of Louboutins. So I had to guess correctly the first time, and I had to do it online with zero experience. I can tell you with 100% certainty that if I'd actually gone to the store and tried on a pair, I would have ended up with a size that was entirely too big for my feet. Because I would have felt like the shoes were too small that were actually the correct size. Fortunately, when I bought my first pair, I did see another YouTube video where a girl adamantly said, please don't size up. I'm going to link it below. I don't know her, but I think it's a great video for everyone to watch, just to further reinforce the understanding that you don't need to size up. But she said that, so I said, okay, I'm not going to size up. So I'm a 7.5 to 8 in real life, and so I got the 37.5 since she said don't size up. I'm really not an 8, I'm really a 7.5, but with my feet being wide I always end up getting bigger sizes. But anyway, so I went with the 37.5. Now the shoes fit great. Here they are. These are my first pair. They're fantastic. I've worn them out to death, so you can see I'm going to need to replace that heel tap soon. But these actually are a little big. Again, I have wide feet. I picked my shoe to size, I didn't go up, and these are a little big. Again, don't size up. But when I first tried them on, I was devastated. I wanted to cry. I thought they were way too tight. To me, it felt like I was taking my fat ass foot and just jamming it all the way up into this little toe box. Oh my god, I felt like I felt like one of the ugly Cinderella sisters. I actually felt like, it kind of felt like my toes were curling under. Now, they weren't actually curling under. If your toes are actually like curling under, that is different. But it kind of felt like it just because I could feel my toes pressing on the outside of the shoe. And it's probably hard to tell on the video, but here you can see right here. If you see it kind of bows out here, that's where I was feeling that tightness when I first tried them on. And that's where the shoe has molded to my feet over time and basically become a perfect, like a glove for my feet, basically. So if you're experiencing that, if you're trying on your first pair and they feel really tight, don't assume they're the wrong size. I almost returned these. The reason I didn't return these was my husband. I asked him what he thought, and he begged me not to go up in size. He said he thought they would be too big. And the thing he noticed was the fact that there was no heel gap. As a matter of fact, there was like a slight heel gap on the right foot, because my right foot's a little bit smaller than my left. But then the left foot looked perfect. There was no heel gap, nothing. And then my toes, although they felt scrunched in, they didn't look scrunched in or anything. Like they were pretty flush. They looked fine. So I had him take photos of me in the shoes, and then I took the shoes off and I looked at the photos objectively, without actually wearing the shoe. And I realized he was right. They look like the perfect size. So why would I turn them in and size up? I'm very glad I did, like I said, because if I got up a half size, I wouldn't be able to wear these right now. If you buy a pair and they're too small, you will know. there won't be any doubt. You will know. I did purchase a pair, and the first sign was that I almost could not get my fat foot into those shoes. My God, was it hard. I normally, when I try on shoes, I either put nylons or lotion to help me kind of slide my foot into the shoe. And even with that, I think I only physically got my feet into the shoes twice. It was awful. Then, I'm going to show you on this shoe, but what happened was when I did get my foot in the shoe, I noticed a couple of things that made it obvious. The first was that my skin was actually kind of like hanging over the sides up here. The second thing was my toes looked scrunched up, like they look kind of bubbled up and scrunched up right here. The real key thing that I noticed though was like on the sides, because I have wide feet, I couldn't see the sides of the shoe. My foot was actually like hanging over a little bit because my foot was just positioned wrong due to it being the wrong size. So my foot was actually like hanging over the sides here. So if you try them on, and number one, it's almost impossible to get them on, or if you do and it looks like you're hanging out of the shoe, then yeah, they're probably the wrong size, or maybe they're the wrong style for you. But for me, that was definitely obvious. It was too small, and that was only a half size difference. So you will know if they're too small. Like I said, you won't have a question in your mind. You'll know, okay, these are way too small. So real quick, I'm actually going to show you a pair that's broken in and one that is not. Now these are different types of leather, so the pattern is harder and it's going to take a lot longer to break in. But I wanted to compare these two because they're the same style of shoe, and I think having the Nappa be the one that's broken in will kind of enhance how well you can see the difference. Although these are the same style of shoe and the same size, the red one that's not broken in looks narrower to me. You can see it's almost like a perfect line right here. But this one that's broken in, you can see like it kind of bows out here and a little bit on the side. And that's what happens with all Louboutins that are leather, whether it's the patent, the embossed, or the Nappa, is they break in and mold to your feet. So this is another way you can tell is if you see this one is wider up here than this one. This one kind of like, it still looks new, it's still bowed in a little bit. And then this one isn't. It's kind of like straight up because it's molded to my fat ankles. So basically. But anyway, so those are good examples just to reinforce the understanding that these shoes will break in and they will get significantly bigger. Okay guys, so the 6-step process, I'm going to run through them real quick so you kind of know what's coming ahead, and then we're going to go into each section in greater detail. So step number 1 is identify your baseline shoe size. This is your starting point for figuring out your size in Louboutins. Number 2 is going to be identify a toe box that works for your feet. This will also include possibly adjusting the size depending on the type of toe box that it is. Number 3, you're going to identify the material of the shoe and then adjust the size based on that material. Number 4, identify the heel height of the shoe and consider adjusting the size again based off of that heel height. Number 5, you're going to identify the purpose for that shoe. Is this shoe you're going to keep it for years and wear it all the time, or are you only wearing this, to one event like a wedding? What is your planned usage rate basically of this shoe? How well are you going to break it in? And then finally, number 6 is on arrival, run your tests to make sure that it fits correctly before you even wear it. So identify your baseline shoe size. We actually have 2 steps in this process. So the first step is to identify the baseline. And it's really, really simple. And I feel like a complete idiot because I didn't know that this was available out there, but Louboutin actually has his own sizing guide on the website. This would have saved me so much if I had printed this out from the get-go and used this to size my feet. So here's kind of what it looks like up close. I'm going to link it below so you can just download it and print it. It is a little complicated, so you can't just hit print. You have to scale it larger and then print it, but there's directions, and then when you print it, you'll measure this line, and as long as it's 5 centimeters, then you're golden. You printed it out perfect and you can use it. If you print it out and it's off, you'll know from the line, but you'll also know because your shoe size will be ridiculously off. I printed it wrong the first time and I think I ended up with like a 42 and I'm a 37, so you know, you'll know. But anyways, print it out correctly. Then what you're supposed to do is there's this little red line and you're supposed to like put the back of your heel up against it. Unfortunately, the line prints off the page. So what I did was I actually put a book on that line and then I put my heel back up against the back of the book and I size my feet that way. The other thing you can do too is just to look down and make sure that your heel is following this line perfectly. So do both and then mark wherever your feet land. So my feet are kind of funny. I have two different size feet. So my left foot, my fat foot, is 37 and my little foot is 36 and a half. It's actually like in between 36 and a half, close to 37. You can kind of tell on here, but it's a little small. So anyways, so if you do come out with two different size feet, don't freak out. I just go with my largest foot. This is your starting point for figuring out your size and Louboutins. This next step is really important, I think, for everyone to do. I know it's gonna seem silly and a little extra, but I actually physically drew out my feet and then measured. This was good for a couple of reasons. Number one, of course, is just understanding the length of my feet and the width. This helps me, especially if I'm shopping online. You know, just you can ask either if it's the store, you know, ask an employee, or if it's online, you can ask the seller and say, hey, how long is that shoe? Just to be 100% familiar with the shape and size of your feet. For me, knowing the width was really crucial because now I know the width of my feet and I can go through and actually I've been measuring all of my shoes and figuring out what my comfortable width is in the toe boxes. And it'll be the same whether you have narrow feet or wide feet, because for narrow feet, if the shoe is too wide, your feet are going to slip out no matter how small. So I think that's important to understand the width of your feet particularly. But also, if you can see, I kind of have short toes. And I didn't really think about that before. But for me, like if I wore the Ariza, which has a very long toe box, it would feel like witch feet. It would not feel comfortable no matter how small the shoe. But I wear the Hot Chicks and the Big Al Foley's because they're a little bit wider, but they have a short toe box, and for me that's actually more comfortable. So just getting familiar with the shape of your feet and then the measurements that you have. Now you can go through, and if you're not sure between two sizes, you can ask a sales associate or someone to kind of give you the measurements of the insole. So you can see, okay, is this one going to be long enough or is it too long? And the same with the width. So this, I highly encourage everyone to draw out your own feet and get your own measurements. You can look online and based off of your measurements, you can determine just how narrow or how wide your feet are. So narrow feet are A, regular are B, C and D are wide, and E are extra wide. I think that helps knowing that too. When I measure myself on that A through E scale, I am right in the middle of C and D, so I'm your typical average wide foot. And I hope that helps you guys out there trying to determine what shoe styles you will wear. If you're gonna want to stick with ones like me, you know, that 97 to 95 millimeter range, or if you're gonna need something either thinner or wider. Identify a toe box that works for your feet. This is crucial. Like I said before, there is a toe box out there for every size and shape feet. I am 100% confident of this. So I'm gonna compare two shoe styles to you, and I think you're gonna be surprised as to which one I prefer. So I have the Simple Pump and I have the Hot Chick. By all logic and reasoning, the Simple Pump should be more comfortable, right? It's got a much softer incline. It's got this lovely thick stiletto for support. And then it's got this nice rounded toe box, so there's a lot of room up there for your toes. But reality is that the Hot Chick is significantly more comfortable for me. 99% of the world will disagree, but I have a weird toe shape that just prefers the Hot Chick over the Simple Pump. So let me show you why, because I think this will help you determine which toe boxes are right for your feet. So if you look at it like this and you compare the toe boxes, the red that you're seeing on that red bottom, that's room. So the Simple Pump has a lot of extra room up here at the top for your toes. However, I have short toes, so I don't really need that. It's nice to have, but I don't need all that room. But if you look at it from the other way. So you barely see that little red sliver on the side right there. I know it's so hard to see on camera, but the Hot Chick is 3 to 4 millimeters wider than the Simple Pump. 3 to 4 millimeters. Now that's not going to mean a lot to most people, but for me, for my comfort, that means the world. I really need that 3 to 4 millimeters of width for my wide feet. So that's why I say you really need to pay attention to the toe boxes that you're looking at, making sure you know the measurements and the shape of your foot so that you can pick out a toe box that's going to work well for your feet. I'm going to actually show you how I measure each toe box so that you can do the same at home. So this is kind of hard to show on camera, but you will get the widest part of the shoe, make sure the 0 is on it, and then hold it up to the other widest part, and this is kind of what I end up with. So this one ends up being 79, and this is my happy spot. For me, every shoe that I measure that's around that width, I'm pretty happy with. But I always do the bottom. You can have people measure like the inside of it, but I think it's harder to get an accurate width that way, and there's too much room for error. I also make sure that if I need a measurement, it's in millimeters, because there's not that much of a difference if you're looking at centimeters and inches especially. I'm going to show you 2 other pairs. So I have Mercy Allen 100, Mercy Allen 130. I want to show you the measurements, but I also wanted you to see how the shoe doesn't change. So Mercy Allen again is about an 80, and this is a 100, and the 130, same. So believe it or not, the number one factor that's going to impact whether or not you size up or size down or stay at your baseline is going to be the material. So the next step is to identify the material of your shoe and either size up or down based on that material, and then taking into account the other factors that we're looking at, like the toe box and the heel height and stuff like that. So in a nutshell, we want to start off with the non-leathers. So the non-leathers would be the mesh, or kind of like satiny mesh material with the little crystals on the outside, and also the PVC plastic. So think of your Spica Queens, you know, with the beautiful plastic toe box that has all those little crystals on the outside. So those are not leather, and they're not going to break in. Particularly with that mesh, that satiny mesh, you're going to want to be very careful with that one not to tear the material. So with those ones, you will probably want to go up a half size. For me, I know if I ever bought one, it would probably need to be a 37.5, not my baseline at 37, because they're not going to break in. So when you try them on, they need to be comfortable at that moment, because they're not going to, you know, break in over time and get significantly wider. So the patent is the hardest type of leather to break in. It's going to hold its shape a lot longer. It will take longer to break in, and it's not going to mold as far as the Nappa or Suede or some of the other leathers. So for this one, although it will break in, you are more likely to either stick with your baseline or go up a half size. It's not as dramatic as the plastic or the mesh, but just know that depending on the toe box and the heel height, you may want to consider going up a half size if it's patent. The next level is going to be the embossed. So the embossed is sort of in between the patent and the Nappa. It's pretty hard too, but it's kind of got, it looks like it's got a Nappa base, and it's just got this harder exterior, but it's not as hard as the patent. For me, the breaking in period is very similar to patent. It's just not quite as bad. So this will mold very well over time, but just not as quickly or as far as the Nappa or the Suede. This one, I think more than likely you will stick with your baseline. You may go up a half size, it's still possible, but less likely than with the patent. And then the last category is going to be the Nappa and the Suede. I put them together because they're both a lot softer than either the patent or the embossed, and they're going to break in quicker, and they're going to break in a lot further than the patent and the embossed will. So for these ones, you're going to want to either stick with your baseline or possibly go down a half size depending on all the other factors that we've been discussing and the shape of your feet. For me, I stick with my baseline with Nappa, and it's perfect for me. So every single Nappa pair I own that fits, besides these ones because these ones are too big, but all my other Nappas are all my baseline, and they fit perfect. All right guys, so heel height actually does impact the size that you pick. So in general, the lower the heel height, the bigger you can go. All my heels are 100 millimeters. If I had to go down, like if I got a flat one or maybe like a 70 millimeter, I would probably just err on the side of caution and get the 37.5, because the thing is when you have your foot in here, with the taller ones, your foot is being pushed forward farther. So it's more likely that your foot is going to break in a little bit further into the toe box, which means the more likely that it's going to actually have a heel gap back here because your foot is breaking in so far. You know, if this was flat, my foot would not be pushing forward, if that makes sense. So in general, if you have a higher heel height, you're going to want to err more on the side of caution and go down. But there is a caveat. There's always a caveat. If you go with above 100 and you go to, this is different. This is entirely different. I'm not sure if it's 100 or 120 millimeters that is really that breaking point to when you have to go back. But, so I have 130s in Mercy Allens and I have the 100s. I've also tried the Hot Chicks. And the issue is that, let me show you with, yes, this will work. Okay, it's a little different. Yes, your foot is being pushed forward. But this one right here, the 130, I don't know if you can tell, I'm trying to show in the camera, but so the breaking point where your foot kind of like hits is right here on the 100s. On the 130s, it's further in. Can you see that? When you get the 130s, you're gonna have less room in the toe box just because of the natural angle and the break there between your foot going down and then going straight. What that means is that the 100 has a little bit more room in the toe box before your foot goes like this. So what I found with the 130s, even though the length might be the same, there's just so much less room in that toe box because of that breaking point being so far forward. So in general, you're gonna need a half size bigger. So this is a 37.5. It's hard to get these on, I'm not gonna lie. It's actually hard, and I have short toes, but it's hard to get these on because of that very small space right here before the break. So this is why I say there is a breaking point where you're gonna need to kind of go up a size just to get your foot in the shoe. I can tell by wearing these 130s that if I actually broke them in like I did with my other shoes, they would be too big. They would. There is a bit of a heel gap, but the likelihood that I'm gonna wear them that often is very unlikely. These are not easy to walk in. So like I said, just for sheer necessity, you will probably need to kind of go up a half size if you get up to the 130 range. If you're one of those crazy people that just, you know, your feet work well with the 130s, you might be okay with the half, like going with your baseline basically. But yeah, for me, like I said, I've tried the 130 and the Hot Chick and with the Mercy Allens, and I could not get away with my baseline, my 37. So the next thing you need to consider is the purpose of your shoes. What do you intend to use them for? Specifically, how often do you plan on wearing them? For me, I get the maximum use I can out of my shoes. I break them in extensively at home. I wear them every day to work. So I get a lot of wear out of my shoes. They see a lot of pavement. And I think most people should have that attitude when they're picking out their shoes because you want them to be comfortable. You're going to want to break them in and you're going to want to wear them. However, if you're buying them just for one event, like for your wedding, that might be a little different because you're not gonna wear them all the time. You're not gonna wear them one day a week for a year. You know, you're gonna wear them for one event. I still would suggest breaking them in at home so they're more comfortable during your wedding day. But I think in that case, it would be okay to go with whatever size is the most comfortable for you on that day. Just make sure you can walk around and your feet aren't slipping out because you don't want to trip or anything. But as long as they're okay and comfortable for you on that day, I think you should be good. For me, with the Hot Chicks that I bought that were too big, if I hadn't broken them in at home first, I could have worn them out for a couple of date nights and been totally fine. It does take some time to break in the shoes. I think by the third or fourth day, they would have been slipping off. But again, it takes time to break them in. So you can get an event or two out of shoes that are probably too big if they're not broken in. The final step is once the shoes arrive, put them on, wear them on carpet to protect the red bottoms, but wear them for about 10 to 20 minutes so the leather warms up to your feet, and then run your tests. So the tests are very simple. There's only 3 tests, but the tests are basically this. You try on the shoe, make sure that there's no heel gap. Then you're going to want to see how far you can stick your finger down. You do not want to be able to stick your finger down all the way. That's very bad. That shoe is definitely way too big if you can stick your finger all the way down. It should be like, the max should be like right here, like just barely in the back of that shoe. And then the final test is to try to slip your heel out and to see if you can get it out. It should be nearly impossible. It might, but you're gonna have to really fight to get that heel out of that shoe. You should not be able just to slip it right out. If you can, it's too big and you're gonna want a smaller size. Once you've purchased your first pair of Louboutins and you've determined that they are the correct size, don't forget to go ahead and watch my breaking in video before you wear them out. Louboutins are notorious for being very painful, but this is because they haven't been broken in yet. Believe it or not, they actually can be comfortable-ish if you break them in. I wear mine all day, every day. So go ahead, watch my breaking in video. That way you know how to break them in at home and you can make them comfortable for yourself, because I want you guys to have a great experience, whether you're wearing them out on date night, to work, or just to the grocery store. I want everyone to have a good experience. All right, guys, I hope this helped. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I tried to make this video as comprehensive as possible, but I know there's a lot of information to consider out there when picking out your first pair. So if I missed anything or you think of any additional questions, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do a follow-up video for you guys. So hope this helped and hope you have a great day. Bye.